Okay, thank you very much. So, good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Thank you very much for coming along to this Bringing Law to Life series. So, my name is Katie Dukes, and I'm a lecturer and student experience manager here at the Open University. And I'm delighted to welcome Amanda Smith this evening, who is an associate lecturer and a former Senior Crown Prosecutor. And I'll be speaking to Amanda in a moment. Thank you very much for coming along, Amanda. We really appreciate you giving us some time this evening. And also thank you to my colleague Joanna Mirek-Tooth, who's going to be managing the Q&A. And Joanna is also a lecturer and student experience manager. So I just wanted to remind you all that there are 14 of these talks that you can listen to, and you can find them on your law study home or your study home page under the Connect tab. So you can listen to any of the recordings that you like, and this one will also be recorded. So what I'm going to ask Amanda some questions, and Amanda's going to share some insights with us all into her journey through the profession and thoughts around accessibility, because of course that is the intention behind these talks, is to help you as students to think about accessing the profession. And we'll do that. If you've got any questions, please do put them in the Q&A, and we will I'll ask Amanda to answer those questions towards the end of the half an hour. And then right at the end, I've got some employability slides that I will share with you. And we've got a short feedback survey that we would be very grateful if you would answer. So good evening, Amanda. Welcome.
Thank you, Katie. And hello to everybody. Thank you for inviting me to talk to you.
Thank you very much. So, Amanda, I wonder if we can start just by hearing about your journey into the profession.
Okay, well, I rather fell into studying the law. It wasn't a sort of lasting thing that I wanted to do. I wasn't very particularly academic, Katie, when I was at school. So I was in the age of O-levels, and I managed to acquire more than I expected to. So I was asked if I wanted to do some A-levels, but my problem was not being academic. I didn't fancy doing sciences or maths or things like that. So I decided to take needlework alongside history and economics. And but at the end of my first year, I was intending to mainly do like needlework and things. And at the end of my first year, my needlework teacher left, and I had to choose another A-level. And because I didn't really want to do sciences, etc., a friend of mine was going down to the local technical college in Huddersfield, which is where I originate from, to do A-level law at a night class. So I asked if I could go along and keep a company. So I did. And it turned out that it was my best subject. So, so as a result of that, I was encouraged to look to go to a polytechnic to study something. And I chose business studies initially, went for my interview for the business studies, and because of my A-level in the law, they suggested that I might want to actually look at doing business law. So that's eventually what I did. I wasn't sure about whether I wanted to do that. I went off to work in for Trust House 40, the big hotel company then, as a receptionist down in Weston-super-Mare. And but then eventually got accepted onto the business law course, even though I didn't have the requisite number of points because I didn't do so well on my other A-levels.
Very good.
But yeah, so that's how I ended up.
So how did you move? Law. Yeah. So from there and into getting a job in the law, what happened there?
So, well, I did my degree, and I went off and did my solicitor's finals at Chester. And of course, when you were studying for your finals, you then decided to apply for articles
Yeah.
So we were called article clerks then. It wasn't training contracts and things like that. So and I did a bit of a work experience with a local solicitor, and he suggested that to get more money during your articles, because of course it was very poorly paid, to apply to go to the councils. So I did.
Ah.
So
To work in their legal department.
yeah, to work in their legal department. So I did my articles. So I got a interview with Cleveland County Council, passed the interview and started my articles with those way back in 1987, I think it was, which is how I ended up here in the Northeast. So
Yeah. And how did you manage to move from working for the council to working for the Crown Prosecution Service?
So, well, the council obviously they didn't have a criminal law department. That wasn't a thing for the council. So we had to do, as part of my articles, I had to do a 6-week stint in criminal law. And other people that have been doing their articles with the council had gone to the CPS. And of course, the CPS was very new at that point. It had only been inaugurated in 1986. So I went and did my 6-week stint with them. And of course, because they were fairly new and they were wanting new prosecutors to join, it was suggested that I apply and join the CPS. So I did.
Fantastic.
That's how I ended up with the CPS.
And I wonder if you can tell us a bit about a day in the life of working as a senior Crown prosecutor, because I think the students will be really interested to hear what that's like in practice and how that might be different, because you've got a really good comparison there with practicing in other areas as you worked in the council as well.
Yeah, so well, initially, I mean, there's a very good training setup in the CPS. There was then, and there still is now. But mainly, you would start off life in the magistrates' court section.
Right. Yeah.
So dealing with fairly straightforward cases, so guilty pleas, things like that. So as far as day-to-day work is concerned, some of the work is office-based in terms of reviewing the files. So you will review files that come in from the police to determine whether or not there's sufficient evidence to proceed and whether it's in the public interest. So that's the majority of the role, is reviewing the files and determining the evidence, if there's other evidence needed. Sometimes that role is actually an advice, so pre-charge, you would deal with that. And then, of course, the rest of the time you spend in court presenting the cases. So initially, as a Crown prosecutor, you would go to the magistrates' court and mainly deal with the guilty pleas that there are. But then as you progress, you would then progress on to dealing with the trials. So, and of course, there is some aspect of being able to keep particular files, but generally speaking, you get anything that anybody has reviewed. So, and of course, that means that when you're preparing for court, you don't necessarily know the case that you've got. And also, while you're in the court, you've very much got to think on your feet quite a bit, because you will get cases transferred in, cases you prepared have transferred out. So, and it can be quite hectic, but it means that on a day-to-day basis, no 2 days are the same. So, which is what I loved about the job in particular. So,
I mean, that sounds to me quite terrifying that you would be, receiving cases that you'd never seen before, and then you'd have to go. And so were you trained in advocacy?
Was I trained in advocacy? I think your training in advocacy very much comes in, you're sent into court and you get on with it. That's why you sort of deal with initially I was dealing with road traffic offences. So, and you were in a small court, and the magistrates, there's usually only one magistrate there and the clerk, and most of the time it was summary offences, so a lot of the time it was guilty pleas by post and things, but you just get used to standing up and talk, saying the facts and things. There is a lot more training now in that respect, so it's more staged. So you will do your training and then you will go on to do particular things. So once you've done some advocacy, in terms of training the advocacy, then you'll be able to be let loose in court really with the trials and things. But a lot of it you can only learn on the job. Absolutely. Because whilst you in a training thing, whilst they try and make it as realistic as possible, you never know who's going to say what and you never know what's going to happen. So you've got, whereas in a training situation, you know who's going to say what and you know what's going to happen. But, and once you get into court, I think the thing, it can be quite terrifying. I know the first time I went into court, I wasn't actually at the CPS. It was when I was at the council, and I used to have to go and do the library fines of all things. And I remember the first time I walked into a court, and you just feel that all eyes are on you and everybody's listening intently to you. And to be fair, you soon realise that there's so much going on in a court that really the only people listening to you is probably the defence solicitor, the magistrates and the clerk. The
clerk,
And nobody else is really bothered. There's a lot of people in there, but they're not really interested, they're not really focused on you. And I think once you realise that there isn't that focused, you start to settle down. And I think the key is preparation for advocacy. So
I mean that so my background is not in criminal law, it's in civil and commercial law, but I have been to watch criminal courts and proceedings, and I always encourage students to go and watch, and that really rings true for me, that sense of very, very different to a civil or commercial courtroom. A criminal courtroom, there's lots of people around, there's lots of activity, and so I guess you would have to enjoy that sense of not everything being quite unpredictable and having to think on your feet, as they say. Amanda, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how accessible you think the profession is, particularly bearing in mind we have lots of students who perhaps are doing their degree over 6 years and they've got other responsibilities and don't necessarily come from that traditional background, as you haven't, as you've described. I wonder if you can say a bit about maybe the culture at the CPS, or if students are interested in going to work to at the CPS, if that, if you think that's an accessible part of the profession.
Yeah, absolutely. The CPS has always been an accessible institution in terms of the profession.
Right.
That I think with it being civil service, in terms of equality and diversity, they're very much ahead, always have been. One of the prosecutors that I worked with, he was profoundly deaf, and he had an implant, and provisions were made for him, and both in the office and at work. So he had a telephone that lit up rather than buzzed, rang. So and I mean, they do. All the people I've worked with, there've been people that have been, things like going off for maternity and things like that. We always got a very lengthy maternity leave. There's always provisions for flexible working. So there's a lot of colleagues that I worked with did what we called condensed hours. So previous to COVID, because obviously COVID changed quite a few things, but we worked on a basis of condensed hours. So a lot of the prosecutors worked Tuesday to Thursday, but they just worked longer hours. And I mean, when I went on maternity and came back, I could set my hours, I could change them as and when to fit with things. So yeah, I mean, it's totally accessible in that respect.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I'm not
So
sure that would be the same in what's commonly described as sort of private practice, or
no,
yeah,
no, yeah. So yeah, I mean, they sort of, as long as you can pass the competencies,
yes,
what your background is irrelevant,
yeah. Well,
because
that's
they're
yeah.
mainly focused on satisfying the competencies that they set in terms of their applications. So
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah,
really that's brilliant to hear. So, you teach on some of the modules, don't you? The criminal law modules, and I know you
yes,
teach on the SQE modules.
yes.
So, for students listening to this or here this evening, how might they develop their competences, do you think, if they want to pursue a career at the CPS?
So, well, sort of the main competences that you will cover are like most jobs, really. So, you have being able to write effectively,
Yeah,
being able to construct a conversation effectively, because one of the things that you would do in terms of an application applying for a job is that you have to do a short video.
right.
So it's all about communication competencies.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
those are the sorts of things that you need to develop.
Okay.
So anybody studying, so if you get the opportunity to be able to talk or advance your argumentative skills in particular,
Yeah,
say through the OU Law Society, the mooting competitions, things
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
All of
yeah.
those things would be helpful.
Great. That's
Um,
great advice. So, mooting competitions, yeah, that really
yeah,
helps to
yeah.
develop those communication skills.
So
Amanda, time is too short, and it's so brilliant to hear your advice here. So I'm going to try and choose my questions carefully, because I think we've got questions in the Q&A. But one of the things that I think it's helpful to ask people who have been in practice about are their role models or mentors, because this has been recognized to be a really significant way that people can access the profession if they have significant mentors or role models. Is there any advice or any experience you have of that that you can share?
yeah, so I mean, I didn't. I'm not from a family of professionals. Nobody had been to university in my family when I went to the Polytechnic, so I didn't know any lawyers. But my dad had a solicitor for whatever he needed a solicitor for. So when he went down to the solicitor's firm, he just asked if, and I could do some shadowing.
Great.
So I ended up with a chap at a firm, and he was the one that he took me round, he let me do things, and he was the one that encouraged me to apply for the council. So he
Okay.
was definitely a role model for me.
And did
So
he inspire you to think you might want to pursue it for your career?
yes, he did, because I mean he was very down to earth, and I think that's the thing. If you get a
Yeah,
down to earth mentor, you can relate more,
yeah.
because I mean there were people in the office that you wouldn't even have gone and given them a cup of tea because you'd have been terrified of them. But
Yeah.
those that were down to earth were, they wanted you to succeed, and
Yes.
that's the thing. He definitely wanted me to succeed, and he was so pleased to see that I'd gone so far.
Yeah, wonderful. So
So
I guess, and I think that I really recognize what you're saying as well, that I think in the legal profession, there will be people who are unapproachable,
yes,
scary, but there are an equal, if not greater number of people who really want to help others succeed in
yes,
the profession. So um I would really encourage people, as you say, to find people that are down to earth and have that
absolutely.
genuine wish to help others, and that can make all the
the
difference and open
is,
up doors to opportunities.
Yeah,
can't
absolutely.
it?
It's never be afraid to ask questions when you're learning, because that helps break down barriers between people. If you can ask a question of somebody and they'll go, they're delighted to try and answer it for you. So
wonderful. Oh, thank you, Amanda. Well, I've got other questions for you, but I think that Joanna, have we got a question in the Q&A from a student?
Yes, we do have 3 questions, so let's see if we can get all of them answered in time. So the first one has got 2 questions in one. So Amanda, what would you need from a paralegal officer to help you as a prosecutor? And what advice would you give to a paralegal in order to progress to a prosecutor?
Okay, so there is a set process for paralegals within the CPS, and I think if you go onto I don't know whether they're currently within the CPS or thinking about joining the CPS. But either way, if you go onto the website, you can actually apply. So in terms of the paralegal, you will probably look to get your degree, and then you can make the application to the CPS. So as I say, there is a set process for it, but if you go on their website, there's a clear application process that you can go through. But yes, we've had paralegals come through the CPS as well. So that have started off in the admin section and they've just worked their way up. But if you're already a paralegal in a different setting to the CPS, then simply apply. Yeah.
Okay, and in terms of progression,
so progression, I mean, the CPS is always keen to progress people. So in terms of the progression aspect of it, you would be going into court anyway, and you would be dealing with guilty pleas. So to progress to Crown Prosecutor, then you would simply apply, literally, to apply to become a Crown Prosecutor. And if you've been working there, it's still the same interview process, whether you're inside or outside of the CPS. Usually after 2 years, you automatically qualify to become a Senior Crown Prosecutor. So, and that's then how you progress in the profession.
Lovely, thank you very much. So next question, are there any opportunities to move around within the CPS, such as court roles, evidence-based review roles? Is it easy to gain experience in each sector?
Absolutely, yes. So on a day-to-day, as I said at the outset, on a day-to-day basis, you'll be reviewing files and you'll be going into court. That's your basics. In terms of which sectors that you work in, obviously there's a Crown Court section. You can ask to be moved into a Crown Court section if you've decided that you've done enough in the magistrates. There's also different sections within the CPS. So there's specific sections like RASO, which is the sexual offences part of the CPS. So you could deal with just purely sexual offences if that's what you want to do, or child abuse cases. You can specialise in different things. So you might specialise in dealing with fraud cases, and you can ask to deal with a particular specialism. You can dip in and out of different areas. So you could spend 6 months doing magistrates court work, you could do 6 months doing Crown Court work, you could do 6 months doing RASO, you could do 6 months doing fraud cases, and you can gain lots of experience in all the areas. You just simply have to speak with your line manager and they will arrange it for you.
Thank you. And Katie, do we have time for the third question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Fantastic. So Amanda, as a mature person changing careers, are people like me welcomed? or do they prefer those less than 30 years old?
No, everybody's welcome in terms of the CPS. So we had many people join the CPS when in my time who had come from other professions. So we had a retired headmaster that retrained, and he joined the CPS about the same time that I did. We had a doctor retrain and join the CPS, and they were both later in life. They were definitely more mature people, and even today they still welcome. It's all about being able to satisfy the competencies when you apply for the role, so which makes it a very accessible career choice, really. So yeah.
Oh, Amanda, that it's really brilliant to hear such positive messages actually about the CPS, and I think to make that really clear to students, perhaps the difference between public and private sector legal careers, and to really think about that when you're applying. Yeah, so that's really wonderful, Amanda. Thank you. I'm really sorry that I'm going to have to share, well, not have to, but I'm going to share the employability slides now, but it's been really brilliant to hear those positive messages about equality and diversity and accessibility at the CPS. Thank you. So let me just going to present these slides, if that's yeah. So just to finish off this evening then, thank you to everybody who's here listening to Amanda live this evening, and thank you if you've been listening to this. We just wanted to remind you, if you're not aware of this already, the very, very extensive careers resources that are available to you. On these slides, there are hyperlinks, and you can link into a planning guide, opportunity hub with opportunities. You can have a workshop, you can have one-to-one advice on your CV, see a careers consultant. You can ask them about pursuing a career in the public or private sector of the legal profession. And so please do make the most of those resources available to you with the OU Careers Service. And we would be really grateful if you could click on the link on the slide and fill in the survey for us, so that we can understand the impact that listening to people like Amanda has, understanding, you know, voices from the inside of the profession has on you. And then we will be running more sessions like this with some positive feedback from all of you. So thank you very much indeed. I think we're just 1 minute to go. So just while everybody's filling out the form, that is Joanna, I think someone's got their hand up, but I think we're done with the Q&A, unfortunately, aren't we?
Yes, you are more than welcome to submit any questions, any additional questions on the forum thread for this, and Amanda will be happy to answer them. Okay, so please do submit them there.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you. Our half an hour is up, so we'll say good night, and thank you to Amanda, and good night to all of you, and good luck.
Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you for listening.